Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program, and joining us in studio, we have Steve Feldmeier. Welcome. Oh, I guess okay. I had the wrong mic on.
Oh, how's that? Testing?
Okay, there we go. You're sitting in number 4, and you have number 3's mic, so that's that trips me up every single time. I need to watch where the wire's coming from. And just so you know, if there's a volume and a cough button there,
okay.
if you need to cough or anything, just hold the button in, or just cough. I mean, I cough on the air all the time. So you're one of our regular callers now. I know I see your number come up on the caller ID all the time, and you're one of the guys that I think really gets it when it comes to constitutional issues.
Yes. What I got involved in it was because about 8 or 9 years ago, that when you listen to politicians talk, they really didn't. They were just talking party lines. They had no clue on how our government works. They just knew how the Republican Party worked or how the Democratic Party worked. And I'm thinking there is more to our government than just the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. It's the Constitution. And they don't understand what the Constitution is about or how it works.
Well, it seems like, and I hate to cast a wide net, but we'll just do it for the sake of discussion. It seems like a lot of these politicians, they know how Washington works,
right?
And they know how the mechanisms of government as they are presently in place work. I don't think they have any. Maybe some of them do, but they could just choose to ignore it. They don't have any idea anymore of how it's supposed to work,
right? And
how it was designed from the start.
It's very simple. The states govern the people. The federal government govern the states. If you keep it that simple, that's how it's supposed to be. So if you look at what our federal government does, we got a Department of Education, we got a Department of Health and Human Services, we got a Department of this, we got a Department of that. 90% of those departments are needed to be ran by the states, not the federal government. The only thing the federal government needs to run is like OSHA, MSHA, the FRA, the FAA, all of those safety regulations that need to be statewide.
Right. It's the things that would be interstate commerce, or even as much as we hate the EPA. I mean, pollution does go across state lines. So I mean, that's maybe some of the things they do. It's a different story, but at least the existence of the EPA.
Well, EPA could vary greatly from state to state depending on the geographics. Look at LA, for instance. They live in a bowl. So their EPA regulations are going to have to be a little bit stricter than they are here in Gillette.
Right.
So the EPA, I think, could go state level.
Well, it could be one of those things where there could be some bare minimums.
Right.
And then,
you have to have a baseline.
And then on a state level, they would be able to, you could always do stricter.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But right now with our FFA, the EPA is so far up in the regulation that they used it. Now it's a political tool.
Oh yeah, and I think that's what's happened with all of these executive branch organizations. I mean, they're not elected; they're appointed. They're lifetime appointments, and they're being used as tools to attack targets. And and I mean, it's easy to point at this administration because I mean they're especially bad, but. It's nothing new. I mean, Nixon did the same thing back in the 70s using the FBI and the IRS. I mean, it's the same sort of stuff.
Right. It is, and that's what it's for. And the American people let them get by with it. And I think right now the American people are starting to wake up to all this.
Yeah.
And
the people are. I don't know. Maybe you're a little bit more optimistic than I am about it. I mean, I do see people starting to wake up and coming out west from moving from back east. There are a lot more people that are aware of it here.
Right.
I mean, aware of the history of the Constitution. I don't know. I don't know numbers, but I'm sure this is probably a little bit more of a politically involved area.
Right. And later on in the show, we'll go step by step on how how I would like to run if I was elected president, on what changes I would actually make.
Sure.
And
so tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, your personal life aside from your political interests. I mean, tell us a little bit about what you do.
After high school, I went into the Navy. Then I went into the Air Force, retired from the Air Force, and then I moved to Moorcroft. Got on with a volunteer fire department out there. Very, very, very well ran fire department out there. I really enjoyed it when I was out there. Ruffled a few feathers because I didn't understand the difference between being in the military and then going to a volunteer type of situation.
Well, yeah. I'd imagine so. I mean,
so things that move quickly is what I thought they should. So I ruffled a few feathers, but I apologize to the guys out there. But I mean, they're a very good group of people out there. I really enjoyed.
So how long have you been in the area then?
Since 1998.
Oh, so you've been here 15 years. So I mean, you're familiar with how things work around here.
Then I'm an engineer conductor on the railroad out here.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure you're well aware of a lot of the things that the EPA's been doing to kind of keep the coal traffic from going west.
And I also worked as an EMT at a coal mine too. So.
Oh yeah. So I mean, you're well versed in how things work in Campbell County, which is. So I mean, are you still in Moorcroft then? Or?
No, I live in Gillette right now.
Oh, you live in Gillette. So you didn't have that much of a drive today. So and I knew you were from the area, but I didn't know exactly where. So how about this? Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about your philosophy, maybe of how. The federal government should work.
Exactly.
Okay, sounds good. We'll be right back. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Better than your first kiss, without all the awkward slobber. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. And welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, in studio we have Steve Feldmeier, and we're talking about some of the problems that we have with our federal government. And, a little bit later on, we'll talk about some solutions as well. I know one of the big problems that you have, and this is actually something that, again, I mentioned at the top of the hour, is something that has always been of interest to me. And that's how the 17th Amendment has kind of wrestled control away from the states. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your philosophy on this?
Okay. It all depends what historian you read about or how they tell it about. Some historians will say it was a progressive move to incorporate socialism into our government. And what the 17th Amendment is where the states used to appoint 2 senators to represent their state to send them to Washington, D.C. The problem with that was some states weren't in legislation all year round, and a lot of seats fell vacant in the Senate. And the states were pretty lazy of filling those seats to where the Senate could have votes. So I think for all this, like I say, the different historians I read about, I think it was more of the two political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, that sort of pushed the issue about having people vote for their senators from the general population to represent their state government. But what you entailed there was that the people are now devoted to the voters and not their state government. So if there was a bill that was passed in the House and the Senate and it was going to hurt the states, the senators would still have to vote according to what their party line was, because that's who put them in office. And so then the states fell to the wayside. The states no longer have a voice in Congress today. So all these mandates, like the health care bill, there was at the time that the bill was passed into law, 27 states voiced opposition to it. They didn't have a lawsuit filed against it, but 27 state governments said, hey, this is going to hurt our states. We don't want this implemented. But 18 senators out of those 27 states voted to accept the health care bill.
And what happens is in a lot of these states, especially some of the industrial states, you have one city in that state picking the senator because Pennsylvania is a good example of that, where it would be two cities in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania, if it weren't for Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, would be a very red state,
right?
And again in Harrisburg, it's a completely different picture than you have with. I mean, right now they have split senators, but for a lot of the time they have two senators of the same party, and those guys are picked by basically Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Right.
And the same thing with Ohio, and Cincinnati and Columbus and Cleveland picked for Ohio, which is a very rural state other than those three cities. And it's the state itself loses its say in the federal government. And the way it was supposed to be, the House was supposed to represent the people.
Right.
The Senate represents the states. The president and the executive oversees everything to make sure it runs smoothly, and then the judicial settles disputes between the parties. And we've gotten away from that.
Yeah, we did. And like I say, because now it's a two political party government. You have what the Republicans want, what they think is good for the country. Now you have what the Democrats think is good for the countries, and the state governments go, wait a minute, guys, what about us? We're out here out in the left field. Nobody's listening to how we like things done, or listening to our views or our concerns. It's only what the political parties want.
Yeah, well, and states like Wyoming get hurt the worst because we out of 535 voices, we only have 3 of those voices.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, you see California, I think, has 53, I think. And there's not really that much of a difference in size as far as land. Obviously, there's a huge difference in population.
Right.
But again, once you get out of the cities, you get out in the rural areas in California, it's not that much different than here.
No. And the representatives, I think it's they do everything in a district, and for every 100,000 people, you get one representative. And that's why Wyoming has only one, because we're less than 100,000.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, a million.
I
think you need to be 1.5 million or 1.6 million to have two reps, because South Dakota only has one, and they're at about 1.3 million.
Right.
So you have to be about 1.5 million to get a second.
800,000. I'm sorry, it's 800,000.
Oh, is it
800,000 people?
Okay, so South Dakota, do they have two representatives or just one? I can't remember.
I think they're only one.
Yeah, only one. Okay, so, but I mean, Wyoming's a long way from having that extra voice, and even then, we'd only have 4. And California still has 53. New York still has 49, and as it is right now, the state actually has no voice in Congress.
No, they don't. The states no longer have a voice in Congress. With all these unfunded mandates that are passed on the states, being EPA, education, anything that comes down from the federal government, the state capital can't go to Congress and say, look, we don't like this. The only way they could fight it is through the federal courts. Now, the Senate appoints federal judges. And for the past 100 years, if you look at our senators, if you ever watched the talk shows on Sundays and stuff, they're very radical. They're either really extreme right in their ideology, or they're really extreme left. There's no common sense. And so when they appoint judges, those are the kind of judges that we have today, what I call the extremist judges. They're activists. They're either activists in one way or they're activists in another way. There's no federal judge that's down the middle.
Well, and they just put agenda before the Constitution a lot of the
exactly,
times.
yeah, and they judge according to their political party. Because you got Republican judges, you got Democratic judges, because that's the people who appointed them, and that's why you have all these extreme Supreme Court decisions. They're always split down, by ideology. The Supreme Court is. The circuit courts around the United States are the same way. Everything is always judged according to a ideology and not the rule of law. Well,
now, would you support term limits for the federal bench?
Since I look at it this way, since the states or the people took the right of the states to appoint the senators to the state, the people vote for the senators, then I think the people should vote for the federal judges if that's the way they're going to go. Because a lot of the federal judges that are around here, a lot of people don't like. Not around here, but around the country,
Sure.
If you look at the approval rating of federal judges, it's pretty low.
Yeah. Well, it seems like nobody in Washington is safe at this point.
No. So, but until we get the voice of the states back into Congress, this party is going to. We're circling the drain because of the two-party system.
Yeah, and how about this? We're going to take our bottom of the hour break, and when we come back, we'll start talking about maybe some of the solutions you have for some of this. So stay tuned. News Talk 1270 KIML. We'll be right back with Steve Feldmeier.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML. Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, we're talking in studio. We have Steve Feldmeier, and we've been talking a little bit about some of the problems that the federal government has, and I think it would be fair to summarize things by saying that the states have lost their say. I mean, that's the core of what you think the problem is, right?
Exactly. We are a nation of 50 states, 50 separate governments. And like I said earlier in the show, the states is what governs our people. They govern our lives. The federal government governs the state governments.
Right.
And it's not the job of the federal government to govern us individually like they're doing today.
Well, and the idea was for the federal government to be kind of the mediator between the states in case there were any kind of disputes or again, things that actually are interstate commerce, which I think has been perverted to something that's non-commerce is actually considered commerce at this point, which is basically gives them the excuse to do everything they pretty much want to. Looks like we might have a question for you. News Talk 1270, you're on the air with Steve Feldmeier.
No questions, just answers.
Okay, what's up?
We got a constitutional government, and the way it's being run right now, it might as well be called government by experimentation and exception. If they don't like something, they just throw an amendment up and change it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. Well, the solution I have for this is to get the states and to get our government back running the Constitution again the way it was originally set up, to where the states have a voice and the states govern the people. If I were elected president, if a bill passed Congress and it passed the Senate, then I would turn that bill over to all the state governments. I would have to have 51 states to approve this bill before I would sign it into law. If I only get 50 states or less, then I would veto that bill. And that operation would be constitutional because the state governments and the state governors would be my advisors. It would be an unofficial vote, but that's what I would base my veto power on, is give all my veto power to the states.
Okay, lots of luck on getting rid of all them amendments you already got in place.
Oh, that'll be easy to get rid of those.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, thanks. Thanks a lot, Duff. Now, that's actually an interesting idea to ask the states for their input on laws that are proposed. You would be able to do that without changing the way things are set up. I mean,
without violating the Constitution, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, nothing stops the president from asking anyone for. Now, you mentioned 51. I mean, would you give Washington D.C. a say as well, or?
Yeah, because they'd be because they do have a representative, not at the state level, but at the congressional level.
Okay, so
yeah, but that person who represents the districts of the states and the following territories,
okay.
I would also,
So, but it would have to be unanimous.
Right.
If something came through that might have had 40 states support it, you'd still veto it because it would be wouldn't be unanimous.
Right.
Oh, okay. See, I've never heard that idea before. That's a pretty interesting idea. Let's go back to the phones. News Talk 1270. You're on the air.
Hey, hi guys. This is Tom.
Hi, Tom. How's it going?
Good. Hey, ask your guest to try to recall the Sagebrush Rebellion. It had potential for more states' rights clout. It kind of just went away. It was back in the days of Malcolm Wallop and putting a toilet seat on your horse while you're rounding up your cows. But that aside, you can't throw. I don't think that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. Interstate commerce. If we gave the states this veto ability, we could get states, holding hostage other states for interstate transportation, railroads, roads, a variety of things that they could, extort funds and things and really cause problems. So, we haven't done everything wrong with the federal government.
Oh, you're right with the federal government. I'm not anti-federal government at all. The federal government will play a major role in exactly what you were talking about, interstate commerce and regulations like that. Because now you're talking where the federal government would come in is to regulate state versus state. What I'm talking about is the EPA regulations that are set on a political move just to shut down manufacturing in certain states. Wyoming was hit the hardest with the Obama administration because the Obama administration doesn't like the state of Wyoming because the state never supported President Obama on any of the things that he supported. Kent Ivory was in here.
Yeah.
And he talked about that on how the coal industry the state only gets what, 50%, 45% of the revenue?
Well, it's supposed to be 50%. During when sequester first started, they cut it back to 48%, and
right.
we finally got that 2% back. But basically, what we do is the coal we mine on our own land, we have to send that money to Washington. Then they send it back to us, and they count that as government spending. So every time you see one of these people defending the entitlement programs, they say, well, Wyoming gets more federal money than everybody. It's our money.
Right.
Yeah. And now I think what the caller was asking about, though, and this might be, how would you handle this, though? Say, and just out of an example, we're talking about building a new interstate highway,
right? And
it's going to go from California to New York, and you get to Illinois, and Illinois says, "Well, we want something that's completely unrelated to this. We're going to hold veto power on this until with your you need a unanimous decision from all the states." But Illinois is being completely unreasonable. They want, I don't know, $10 billion for widgets, or it doesn't matter what they want, but they want something completely unreasonable that's completely unrelated, and they're going to hold this hostage. I mean, would you let it go, or would you stick to the 50 state unanimous decision?
Oh, that's a fine analogy. Let's look at a reality. Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the states that's going to affect. It's going to affect Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Missouri, some of Arkansas, and Louisiana. I could care less what the state of California says. I could care less. Unless that pipeline is in your state, I don't want to hear from you.
Oh, so
it's only going to affect the states that it's going to be in there.
Okay, so it would be one of these cases where if somebody was holding, I mean, you wouldn't have the unanimous rule as a set in stone thing. It would be one of those things you would take the advice of the states and
right. If it was a nationwide mandate on all the states,
right,
that's when the states' governments would get involved. The Keystone Pipeline or the highway you're talking about, only the states affected would what I would consider the vote on. I would say, is this good for your state or is it not good for your state? If it's good for your state, we'll go for it. If you don't like it, then we won't go for it.
Okay, so it's one of those things where, I mean, you'd be flexible with it enough because, right. I mean, you'd still have the same veto power that the president would have now. It'd just be a little bit different. And let's see, I think we might have the same caller back. Might have another question for you. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, it's a good discussion. This is fraught with, I shouldn't even say this on this side of the Montana line. If California puts emission controls on generating plants and a carbon quantity output, emissions from these plants travel across state lines, and so they can say to Wyoming, we're going to put a cap on the number of carbon units that you ship to us. And, I think they have a bigger voting population than we do, and that's been a constant problem with Wyoming's positions, is we're simply outgunned, and boy, the tyranny of the majority can, fraught with troubles, but thanks for talking about this, guys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I think that all goes back to, again, the 17th Amendment took it really is the tyranny majority. I mean, it's the old thing with, two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner.
But I see where the caller's coming from. What I would do is I would say, okay, this is the baseline EPA regulations on mercury, mercury in the air from the power plants, mercury, sulfur, carbon monoxide, and stuff like that. Carbon dioxide and the carbon count, the tax and cap stuff is a political tool that they use to shut down the coal industry. Carbon dioxide, I would not consider as a pollutant. I would not consider the carbon footprint as a pollutant. That would be unregulated.
And again,
because global warming to me is like believing in God. You could have 10 scientists to prove it happening, but you could take other 10 respectable scientists and prove it's not happening. So, is it happening? Is it not happening? Nobody could prove it. Just like your faith. Is there a God or is there not a God?
Well, and even if you have evidence that something's going on, again, you don't know where it's coming from,
right?
And again, like so many other things, especially when you're talking to the EPA, it's a political tool used to bend the will of the states. It's also a way to get donations from people. Right. I mean, the whole thing is just a political tool. It has nothing to do with actual science at this point.
Well, when I was a kid, I grew up by Gary, Indiana. And we had a lot of the steel mills by Gary, Indiana and stuff. And they didn't have any EPA back then. And they had straight stacks from their smelters all the way out to the air. And there would be days where it would be orange. The Lake Michigan was dirty. You dead salmon anywhere. You go on the beach, your feet were dirty.
Oh, yeah.
When the EPA came in and says, okay, this is common sense, the pollutant control, you can't have so much sulfur, carbon monoxide, any of those pollutants. It cleaned everything up. But now we are over-regulating, okay, to the point to where now we're starting to call carbon dioxide a pollutant. And you can't do that because there's no proof into it. And why kill a country on a theory.
Well, I think that, and again, the whole thing just comes down to the right people are making political donations.
Right.
The people that build, I don't know, windmills, solar panels, they donate to the right people and they get what they want. So, and now, again, I mean, you're talking some of these solutions that you have. I mean, now you really are running for president then, right?
I am. I really am running for president.
Okay, because the website's Feldmeier for president, and I was like, well, somebody from Gillette running for president. So I was kind of surprised. But, I mean, tell them, how did you decide that this is what you need to do?
Because it's the same arguments year after year after year. It's a tug of war. You know, are we going to do what Republicans want, or we want to do what the Democrats want? But there's nothing in either party to fix the country. The only way you could fix the country is you have to have state government involved in Congress again, and no political party is willing to do that.
Well, and definitely haven't seen any real proposals to repeal the 17th Amendment. I think we might have time for one more caller. Let's give it a shot. News Talk 1270, you're on the air. Hey, John, are you there? Okay, I think he probably he drops in and out of signal a lot, so I recognize the number. So call back if you have a chance. We still have a couple minutes. So you decided that you wanted to make this run. I mean, I'm sure you know it's a tall mountain to climb. I mean, how are you going to go about this?
Well, like I say, this is my first year of running for a political or a public office.
Well, I might as well start at the top, right?
and I'm thinking, people are lost at the top level, So if I could get my ideas out on how to solve the problems, not just sit there and complain about the problems, then people might listen to me.
Well, and I mean, I do find it kind of, I mean, it's admirable that, I mean, you're willing to put your money where the mouth is, so to speak. So, okay, let's try this again. Actually, we have a couple calls. We'll take them real quick. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yes, when you talk about the EPA, now, we all know that Congress is supposed to make laws, yet they're letting the EPA legislate to make laws. The EPA is just putting out rules that are turning into laws. How are we going to stop that?
That was initiated by Congress themselves. The Congress were tired of campaigning on CO2 content, sulfur contents. So they say, well, we're not experts in this field. We'll let the EPA, since they're an expert, we'll let them fill out their own, what they feel should be regulated, and then we'll let them enforce their own law. And Congress shot themselves in the foot by doing that.
Well, and I will say the president is head of the executive. Yeah. The EPA works at the pleasure of the president. I think we might have time for one or two more calls. Okay, I'll get one more call. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Yeah, hey, last thing. I think if you could, this little tongue-in-cheek here, Sarah Palin's probably available for the vice presidency, so, I mean, you might raise some money that way.
Oh, I was thinking about her. I was.
Hey, well, good luck.
Okay,
good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, we have another minute or two. News Talk 1270, you're on the air.
Hello, Don. This is Bill. I just had a thought. I was wondering what your guest there would think about the Department of Justice being under the power of the House instead of the president.
That's an interesting thought. Hey.
Yeah. The president shouldn't have any powers whatsoever. I'm going to be transferring all of the Department of Educations and that sort of thing where it affects the individuals. All of that's going to be returned to the states. Ever since 1976, when Carter took over the Department of Education, prior to that, we were number one in education. Now we're 27th because the federal government got involved in it. And there was a talk earlier about the core, the Common Core. Earlier.
Oh, what a mess.
Yeah, and we don't have time to talk about that. But that, there's a lot involved. That's why I wanted to turn everything over to the states.
Yeah, well, and it could be a situation with the Department of Justice that might not even be needed at this. I mean, I guess you need a bare minimum FBI to prosecute interstate commerce crimes, but for the most part, most of these things are already illegal in the states.
Yeah,
they don't need to be. They don't need to be prosecuted by the feds.
Department of Homeland Security. There's another one that I would just eliminate because it turned out to be nothing but a duplication of the FBI.
Yeah, and a jobs program.
Yeah, and it's a $57 billion a year budget for that.
Oh.
And so why have two FBIs? So I do away with the Department of Homeland Security, put the border the border guards back under the Department of Justice.
Yeah,
instead of the Homeland Security.
Yeah, and with that hour flew by, so we're out of time. But I want to thank you, Steve Feldmeier, for coming in. The website is Feldmeier, Feldmeier, for president, all spelled out, all one word. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again sometime soon. Hey, thanks a lot. Okay. And with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock sharp. Stay tuned for Rush. News Talk 1270 KIML.
If it's happening in Wyoming, he's talking about it. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.
Turns with this Fox News and commentary next.